Hitler, Bashar al-Assad, Muammar Gaddafi, whoever it is, they're the next Hitler. And it's always just so ridiculous. And I've heard from a lot of the hardcore Israel supporters that Hamas are Nazis. The comparisons are ridiculous.
Tim Miller embarrasses himself on the Piers Morgan show on a panel shared with Dave Smith and others. But are you really surprised that this dude embarrasses himself once again? Let's see how this goes.
Formed and repeated for emphasis and clarity. People can officially stop listening to you as any sort of reputable source of information now. You work for them. Thank you for making that crystal clear. In other words, the Anti-Defamation League now work for the Nazis. Extraordinary stuff from AOC. It seems to have gone, even by her standards, bonkers. We've been joined, Tim Miller's with us now. Tim, great to have you back on Uncensored. I watched this.
Dude, I knew. I saw Piers Morgan had this new video up. I knew as soon as I saw Tim Miller in it, I was like, this is going to be good. I mean, already, look at him, man. He couldn't even do his hair properly. He always looks like a mess.
I watched the immediate reaction. I thought, here we go. We're back into the Nazis. Is there no way of American political discourse, led by the Democrats, I have to say, is there no way of just moving past Nazis and Hitler? Can we not just all agree that it's a ridiculous and fatuous thing to keep playing out as a narrative and doesn't work? Hence Trump's big win, despite everyone on the left calling him a Nazi. Thoughts?
Yeah, we'll start with one area of agreement, actually, that I have with you and Clay, which is different for me lately, which is I agree that it is, I don't think, a good strategy. The fact that you guys are talking about it shows that it's not a great strategy. If they were doing some very effective messaging, I kind of think that Clay would probably be ignoring it. So I agree. I think Elon's kind of a weird guy that was doing kind of an awkward gesture. I think we can all admit it was kind of awkward, but he does a lot of kind of awkward things. If I was the Democrats, here's what I'd be focused on when it comes to Elon Musk. This man is the largest government contractor, the largest recipient of government money. He is the largest donor to Donald Trump's campaign. He is the owner of a communications platform, and he will have an office inside the White House. I mean, there was mass outrage on the right about the fact that some people in the Biden administration were emailing Facebook and Twitter people recommending the content be taken down. I don't think that was very smart. I think that was bad policy by the Biden administration. But it was kind of mid-level bureaucratic stuff. I don't think it was really limiting people's free speech all that much. Now, I don't understand how you could be upset about that, but then be okay about the owner of a communications platform having an office in the White House, having a security clearance, and being able to put the thumb on the scale of his algorithm to promote what is happening out of this administration. I mean, we can all agree, if you just go on the Twitter or the X For You page, it's like Elon Musk Propaganda Central. So now we have an officer of the American government controlling a communications platform. I would think that people who are concerned about speech and free and open dialogue in this country would be astonished by that. In addition to the potential corruption, if you're an Elon competitor, what must you be thinking right now if you're a competitor of SpaceX or competitor of Tesla, which receive billions of dollars for the government, and the owner of that company is now going to have control over a government efficiency program where he gets to choose where money goes? The corruption here is astonishing. It'd be like if George Soros had an office off of the West Wing when Joe Biden was president. It's insane. So if I was the Democrats, I'd be focused on that level of corruption and not his awkward hand gesture.
Well, Tim Miller surprisingly isn't completely wrong. He's not completely wrong. He's still a little bit wrong, though. The thing that he gets wrong, though, is that, he said, the government is messaging Facebook and social media to tell them to take certain things down. I don't think that was censoring anyone's speech. Dude, really? Oh, yeah. Mark Zuckerberg going along with the government telling him to take down things about like Hunter Biden's laptop, for instance. So anyone that posted about the laptop, they got their stuff taken down. That's not censoring anyone's free speech. You know what I mean? So once again, it's like the Democrats, they always gotta, even when they're making some sense, they always still gotta stick to their talking points. So now the Democrats are raising alarms about oligarchies and stuff, which I'm not saying that's not something to worry about. I agree. That is definitely something we should be concerned about. But where was this concern during the Democrats' reign when large corporations and, when large corporations were censoring people, deplatforming people, helping to push the propaganda of the Democrats, the LGBTQ agenda and things of that nature? Like, where was all this concerns about oligarchy when it came to that?
Very interesting what you've just said. And I'll bring Dave Smith in because I've got to say, it's good to hear someone on the left admit that this Nazi stuff is bullshit. I just think it is, and it's just stupid. And also, I just feel I'm not Jewish, but if I was, I would be so endlessly offended, deeply, mortally offended, that people keep trying to draw an equivalence between Donald Trump and the Republicans and the Nazis. I just think it's ridiculous. Anyway, first, your thoughts on that. But secondly, interesting point I thought there from Tim, which is, yeah, you can. I didn't actually agree with your first part, Tim, about Facebook and stuff. I think they did have a pretty insidious impact on things like suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story, the New York Post getting locked out of social media for the last 2 weeks of that last election, and so on. I think that was very wrong. However, I do think you make a very interesting comparative point. And Dave, I'm interested what your take is on this. First, Nazigate, but secondly, the point Tim makes about Elon Musk getting an office in the West Wing and comparing that to the influence perhaps that Facebook had last time round.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, there's some that I agree with, a lot I don't. So I would be in agreement that I think even if you want to make the argument somehow that like Elon Musk was a dog whistle, he's a secret Nazi and he chose this as his moment to like subliminally come out as a Nazi, and that was the message somehow. The fact is, Piers, as you addressed at the top of the show, the Democrats have just gone to this well far too many times and nobody's listening anymore. So even if this was the real case, which I don't think it is, I think he's just a somewhat awkward kind of herky-jerky guy in these moments. But even if this was the case, I'm sorry, you just billed Donald Trump's rally as a Nazi rally because it was in Madison Square Garden. Yeah. And that was the only connection that you had. So it's just boy who cried wolf. And I will say, I am Jewish. I don't think it matters that I'm Jewish and you're not. I think we can all have an opinion on this. But I think that the constant comparisons to Hitler and the constant invoking of the Nazis is just stupid. Yeah. And I'll put the blame initially, I really think it's the neoconservatives who first really put this into the popular lexicon, where every single enemy that they wanted a regime change against was always the next Hitler. Saddam Hussein's the next Hitler, Bashar al-Assad, Muammar Gaddafi, whoever it is, they're the next Hitler. And it's always just so ridiculous. And I've heard from a lot of the hardcore Israel supporters that Hamas are Nazis. The comparisons are ridiculous. And we don't need to pretend.
This Tim Miller guy is freaking hilarious. He's trying to talk back against Dave Smith, but his freaking mic's off. Like, look at him. Look.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you if you're trying to interrupt me, but let me just finish my point. I think that the Nazis were a unique evil, and to call everybody Nazis it does just make the term lose value. Now, I would say that to the amount of censorship that we saw under the Biden regime and even before Joe Biden came in, I think is just not fair. I mean, listen, as somebody who was adamantly opposed to lockdowns and vaccine mandates during COVID, the censorship was very widespread, and many people had their lives and livelihoods ruined simply for speaking up about government policies that, by the way, they turned out to be right about. And all the people saying follow the science turned out to be wrong about quite a bit of the science. I would also say that it's interesting to me that Democrats always seem to get concerned with the concentration of power as soon as they're out of power. And it's kind of wild to see that the party of George Soros and banker bailouts and all types of just corrupt concentrated power now have an issue with this. I think there's always a concern. This is the way the American political system is set up. And yes, there is a concern with powerful private interests wielding government influence. But I also would not equate the government getting in the business of censoring the American people with someone like Elon Musk, who at least his promise with Twitter has been that it's going to be a free speech platform. And I think he's moved more in that direction. And so they're not the same thing at all. Like, I don't have the same problem with a tech executive being in the White House who's going to protect free speech than I do with the government instructing tech executives to censor speech.
Okay.
My thing, well, first of all, Elon Musk has been censoring people on X. I mean, he's been maybe not straight up banning people, but he's been taking away check marks. He's been demonetizing people because he doesn't like what they have to say when they spoke out against him on his H-1B1 visa stance. Laura Loomer is a big example. She's still, I don't think she's monetized still. I think she got her check mark back, but she's not monetized on there. That's because she spoke out against Elon Musk. There is still a concern that Elon Musk is going to be censor happy as the previous owners. Also, too, personally, it's not the same thing. Like, Elon Musk is being brought into the White House to make sure the government is running efficiently, like kind of like what he did when he went on X. When he bought X, he fired all the people that didn't need to be there. And I think that's what he's been hired to do in Doge. So his job position in the White House doesn't really have anything to do with censorship or free speech or anything like that, He's not being hired he's not being put in charge of anything that has to do with speech. He's been put in charge of making sure the government is running efficiently, like the offices are running efficiently. That's my understanding anyway. I don't know if I'm wrong about that. If I am, sound off in the comment section below. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but time will tell if this is a good idea or not. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you're enjoying so far. Let's continue. Let's see if Tim Miller figures out that his mic is off.
Tim, you were trying to speak there. I'm not quite sure what happened because we couldn't hear you. So let's bring you in to respond just quickly before I go to Ali.
Yeah, sorry, very quick, just two quick things. One, Bashar al-Assad and Hamas are Hitler-esque, I would say, certainly more than Elon Musk. I was just trying to object to Dave's point that it was like the neoconservatives comparing Bashar al-Assad and Hamas to Hitler. I mean, there were some comparisons there, so I was just going to say that. But look, just to the last point,
we'd all be speaking Arabic.
This is how the American
we'd all be
system
speaking Arabic if we hadn't overthrown Bashar al-Assad.
Okay, well, we weren't all speaking German either. But the thing about Musk, this idea that this is how the American system works. That is wild. Please show me an example of this. The largest donor is the largest government contractor is now in the West Wing. That is insane. That is not how the American system works. And I guess if you go back to the Gilded Age of Rockefellers, but the idea that one of the richest men in the world who also gets money from the government is now going to be deciding how the government spends money, that is not how the American system works. It is and obviously they've only been in 2 days, so we'll see. But the potential for corruption and influence there is unprecedented in post-war American history. And then on top of that, to say that he has a platform, and maybe you're saying it's free speech because he's not banning people, though I think he was taking away some people's blue checks. But his platform has an algorithm where he promotes certain things. So if you're on the For You page, you get promoted pro-Musk, pro-Trump stuff. So somebody having that kind of concentrated power in the government, please show me an example of anything even remotely close to this in the modern times.
I want to be fair. I want to bring in Ali, who's not said a word yet, been waiting very patiently. I will bring you other guys back in on this. It's a really interesting debate, I think, about Elon and his power. Ali, first of all, your view of Nazigate.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with Tim here. I don't really know what happened there. I think it was pretty bizarre hand gesture, but ultimately, I'm not in the business of giving Elon the benefit of the doubt necessarily, but I think there's a lot more we can criticize him on and the Trump administration on, and we should focus our efforts there. But no, like Tim said, I think it's unprecedented to have this level of money and power in support of this administration and have access to this administration. You have CEOs of major media companies, X, Meta, Apple, Google, and we've never seen this before. Just a few years ago, the right was complaining about Mark Zuckerberg and Zuckbucks and how they were funding the Democratic campaigns, and now all of a sudden he's their best friend. So I think there is a level of hypocrisy there, that they are in support of this now, and they weren't just a few years ago when Joe Biden was in office, and we weren't even close to this level of power and money behind the scenes.
Okay, Clay, what's your view of Elon? I mean, Elon Musk is now everywhere. He's kind of omnipotent. He seems to be almost attached to Trump's side. Are you concerned about that? A lot of the diehard MAGA crowd are pretty concerned about this. They don't even think he's a real conservative. They think he's, somebody who used to be on the left, who's come in for perhaps financial expediency, that he's making tons of money out of this relationship with Trump. I don't think it's as simple as that. But do you have the same concerns about Musk here?
I don't, but primarily because I don't even think Elon Musk has necessarily a Republican constituency here. Because remember, Elon Musk voted for Joe Biden against Donald Trump in 2020 publicly.
If you're enjoying so far, smash that like button, subscribe to my channel. You'll be helping me out a lot. Let's continue.
Said that. And Elon and Trump really didn't get along very well at all. If I remember correctly, Elon withdrew from one of the blue ribbon panels of CEOs that Trump had put him on in the first Trump regime. And I look, if Elon is advocating in some way for his companies, I'm not even sure that that's a bad thing. That's his job. And let's think about this. He's actually better at sending rockets to space than NASA is. I mean, let's just focus on this for a moment. We're talking about the most successful entrepreneur maybe in the history of the world. He was a darling of the left not very long ago because he had the radical idea, hey, we've got to take fossil fuels out of the way that we propel vehicles. I'm going to redesign an entire method by which we move vehicles, and we're going to do it on the electric grid, which is a seismic, unbelievable success story. Like I said, he's better at sending rockets to space now than NASA. They had a 70-year head start on him. We can't even get our astronauts off of the International Space Station right now because we don't have the competence. We can't even go back to the moon right now because we don't have the competence at NASA. Meanwhile, Elon is landing reusable rocket ships, and he's again caught up and past NASA after 70 years. And here is the larger reality. I think motivation matters. You talk about X and what he wanted to do. Elon's goal, I really believe this, is to make mankind multiplanetary. He wants to send us to Mars. During that speech, you saw the meme that went viral of Elon losing his mind when Trump said, hey, we're going to put a man on Mars. I think Elon wants to go to Mars and probably end his life there one day.
No question.
In the future. So I'm not concerned about Elon Musk trying to be some sort of dictator or emperor or whisperer into Trump's ear to destroy the fabric of American democracy. Because I think what this guy wants, when you look at vehicles, when you look at spaceships, when you look at why he bought Twitter, they're all aligned with the goal of ensuring that we're multiplanetary because he's worried about mankind being wiped out. And by the way, all of his actions, that's why he's got 11 kids, because the global population is collapsing. So I am not concerned about Elon's motivations right now because I think his motivations are not to make sure that Democrats suddenly have less success in the political arena. If Democrats would line up with Elon Musk and say, hey, you know what? We support free speech. We're not going to try to shut people down. Hey, we also are in the opinion. I'd love to hear from the left on this panel. You talk about like kind of misguided notions. There's only one Democrat in Congress right now that will say men shouldn't compete in women's sports. Elon Musk is far from the issue for Democrats right now. It's that they're trying to sell something to the American public.
Well, we're going to get to that whole. Yeah, we're going to get to the whole.
I guess when it comes to the whole Elon Musk having an office in White House thing, only time will tell. I'm a let's see where this goes type of person. I see what Clay here was talking about. Like, yeah, he seems to be more efficient than our own government. But I'm going to be honest here. I get where Tim Miller's concerns are coming from too. So only time will tell. Personally, I don't think we'll ever be able to colonize other planets. It's just we're made for Earth. We're made to survive on Earth. We're not made to survive on Mars or the moon or anything like that. It will be cool if we land a man on Mars. That would be great. That would be awesome. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever be able to colonize there. We can't even colonize the ocean. Like how come there's no underwater cities or anything like that? Like, we haven't built any underwater cities. We haven't learned how to survive like underwater for lengthy periods of time where we could build a civilization underwater. And that's here on Earth. And that's because we're not built to be underwater. Our bodies just aren't made to survive the depths of the ocean. And so if we can't even survive the depths of the ocean, what makes you think we could survive in Mars's atmosphere without wearing some kind of spacesuits 24/7 or something like that, you know? It's just personally, I don't think it'll ever be possible. But what do you guys think about that? Sound off in the comment section below.
End of the thing. I first of all want to touch on this whole pardon situation, Tim, because it seems to me that if it wasn't for Joe Biden, you guys on the left could run riot literally about the January 6th rioters. And you could say, hang on a second, this is an outrage. And the reason is because many people on the right, including J.D. Vance, very publicly said the people who committed violent acts that day shouldn't be pardoned, and they've all been pardoned. The problem you've got is that at least they all were in prison having been convicted of crimes at the time they got their pardon. But your guy, I won't say your guy, the current Democrat president of 2 days ago, but now no longer, Joe Biden, has preemptively pardoned so many people, including half his family, so that they can never, ever be in a court of law over any potential crimes, and so on. So it seems to me that by doing that, what Biden's done, he's just completely neutered the arguments on the left about the January 6th rioters who've been pardoned. Discuss.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I just want to do one sentence, if you don't mind, on just something that Clay said, because it raised my eyebrows for anybody that cares about a free market economy, which is what I think people on the right at least used to believe in this country, that he would say that it does not bother him that somebody with immense power who is a government employee now would be looking out for the interests of his private company inside the White House. Like, that's Russia. Like, that's kleptocracy. Like that. Like, we have a free market.
Okay, I thought we were done with this, Tim Miller. Real quick, you know, like I said, let's see where this goes type of person. Keep in mind, Donald Trump is a business owner. He's a businessman. He runs businesses, and he's the president. He's the man in charge. So I'm just saying, like, I didn't see any of these concerns either time when Donald Trump ran for president or when he was president. You guys were just busy calling him a bigot and a fascist. But I never once really heard major alarms sounding off like, oh, won't that be a conflict of interest? Like, yeah, I've heard maybe a few things here and there, but that was never your guys' big issue. Now it seems to be a big issue.
Shouldn't have the CEO of one car company
than our public tax dollars are with NASA.
Congrats.
SpaceX is way better than NASA.
I agree with you.
I want SpaceX to be better.
Agree with you. Congrats. I agree with you. But there's Blue Origin. Tesla has many competitors that are American companies with American workers that work for those companies. It's insane to me that we think it'd be okay for a CEO of a company to be inside the White House advocating for his company's private interests when there are other American companies.
You know what I
that
think,
should
Tim?
have equal playing field in a free
To bring the Elon debate to an end, I think the reality, and Clay won't admit this, I wouldn't expect him to, but if this was the other way around, and you had Mark Zuckerberg suddenly popping up in the Biden administration with an office next to Biden, I think on the right, all hell would break loose. I do. So I do think there's a slight, we're not comfortable about this, but we don't really want to say it. Now, I'm not going to speak for Clay, but I do want to move on to January 6th.
Thank you, Piers.
January 6th pardons. So let's discuss that.
Yeah, good news. I got good news. I don't wear a Democratic team jersey. I'm on the left, I guess, in the sense that I don't like Donald Trump and I think that he's corrupt and I think his administration is going to be a disaster. But it's very easy for me to say that Joe Biden's pardons were absolutely disgraceful. And I don't think that Joe Biden's really, frankly, disgraceful behavior over the last year, basically, does anything to alibi Donald Trump's appalling pardons. Like, Joe Biden doing a favor for his brother sucks. That is bad. But we can judge two bad things against each other and decide what is worse. Donald Trump pardoning people that tased police officers. Donald Trump pardoned a man, Enrique Tarrio, that that burned flags and started an arson and
Wait a minute. Since when did the left care about burning flags and assaulting police officers? Since when? Yeah, it's one of these cases where, well, it's bad when they do it, but it's good when we do it. When we do it, it's the language. It's the language of the unheard. But when they do it, it's evil and it's bad.
and had a group of people that stabbed people outside of a black church. So like this is supposed to be a patriotic, pro-police, pro-Christian party, and immediately the first thing you do is pardon people that did an arson outside a black church, that tased police officers, that stormed the Capitol. Have you seen the picture of Sergeant Aquiles Ganell's body? Like what happened to his feet and hands because of the way that these people attacked them? The actual person that tased Michael Fanone, that person got pardoned. It is just insane and appalling that Donald Trump did that. And the fact that not a single person in the supposed Black the Blue party, I guess that's not true. I think Tom Tillis might have, but the fact that you have to maybe come up with one person that said this is wrong, I don't know. I don't know actually how you kind of sleep at night if you're a Back the Blue person and you're like, we're going to let somebody out of prison that tased police officers.
Well, I mean, Dave Smith, if you look at the list of people that Biden's pardoned, they include murderers, very controversial, cop killers, and others. There is a direct parallel there. They've also preemptively pardoned Dr. Fauci, interestingly, going back to 2014, which means it doesn't just cover the immediate period of the pandemic. It goes back to potentially when he may or may not have been doing stuff he shouldn't have been doing in relation to work on these kind of viruses. So it's a very all-encompassing preemptive pardon. And it's that preemptive nature of it, which Biden himself was on record as saying he'd never do, which I think has been particularly problematic for him. But in relation to Trump's pardoning, J.D. Vance said clearly that there should be a difference. Those who were violent against police officers should not be pardoned. And those who were not violent, many of them did get, it seemed to me, got very lengthy sentences. They should be pardoned. And that's what Trump has done. But he went further. He went and pardoned the violent ones too. So he went against what his own party, senior members, his own vice president wanted him to do. So what do you feel about all this?
Well, I mean, my perspective on this, and because I am a radical libertarian, and I do believe in laissez-faire free market economy, which we do not live under. But I think it's interesting that people almost have this kind of police state mentality, whereas we're asked here, how can you sleep at night knowing that there are some violent, crew who, I don't know, I guess only did a few years in brutal conditions and are not going to continue to be in prison. And yet, personally, I subscribe to kind of the classical liberal idea of better 100 guilty men roam free than one innocent person is put in jail. And so my focus, my how do you sleep at night, is much more about the nonviolent people who were so brutally, essentially tortured by the state. By the way, one other one which is very close to my heart is that Donald Trump just pardoned Ross Ulbricht, who was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years, served nearly 11 years in prison for creating a website. I mean, it was essentially the same logic as if you were to throw Zuckerberg in jail because 2 people on Facebook messaged about doing something illegal together on his site. I mean, and to me,
So about Ross Ulbricht, listen, I'm not an expert on that whole situation. I know very little, but people were excited that he got pardoned, and I'm like Dave Smith is kind of minimalizing it. He's oh, he just created a website. It was a little bit more than that. He allowed his website to sell, as far as I know, I don't know completely what Silk Road sold. As far as I know, it sold illegal drugs, and he did nothing to stop it. Yeah, I know illegal things go on other social media platforms, but at least they do. It's the whole driving a car. You can buy a car to drive it to go unalive somebody, but the purpose of the car isn't to do that. And so it's with the Mark Zuckerberg example, yeah, illegal things go on Facebook, but they do try to stop it. They do try to crack down on it. There are rules against it, even if they are terrible at enforcing those rules. But Facebook wasn't created so you could sell illegal things on it, like to do illegal stuff on it. It enabled more illegal activity than your standard website or whatever like that. With that said, though, I do think 2 life sentences and 40 plus years, yes, I think that's harsh. I do think that's harsh, especially when there's criminals that have done worse that are serving sentences for much less. You have like actual murderers not serving as harsh of a sentence. So yes, do I think his sentencing was harsh? Yeah, I could agree with that. But let's not like minimalize it and say, oh, this man, he did nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong. It's he kind of did.
You sleep at night knowing that that's what our society does, that our society, could you imagine, Piers, ever justifying a double life sentence plus 40 years for anything short of like a heinous, brutal, violent crime?
No, listen, on that, I totally agree with you. But on the point about the violent offenders on January the 6th, it is slightly perverse. And I'll come to Clay on this, actually. It just seems to me slightly perverse that a Republican Party would be comfortable with people who attacked police officers at the Capitol, the very heartland of American democracy, that they attacked them and were convicted of attacking police officers, and that they have also been pardoned, as if that crime never happened. Do you feel uncomfortable about that?
I don't. And let me explain why. I've been making this argument, and I was on The Fringe making this argument for years. What has happened here is we've kind of lost sight, to me, at what a pardon is intended to do and also what a commutation is intended to do. What Joe Biden did, and I'm going to circle back to Trump, what Joe Biden did, I think, is actually unconstitutional because, as you said, Piers, he has preemptively pardoned Dr. Fauci and 5 of his family members for things that they haven't ever been charged with so far. He's just basically given them a get out of jail free card. Not only that, but you can never even be accused of having done anything that might justify you being in jail. I said, and I don't have a problem with it, I've got 3 sons. If I were Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, my son had been convicted of felonies and he was potentially going to go to prison, as he was. And as part of that, I believed that he was being prosecuted to a certain extent because of my political background. I would pardon my own sons. I went on. I don't have a problem with that. I expected him to do it. My issue there is he lied and said he wouldn't do it, when I think a lot of dads and moms out there said, of course he's going to do this, right? But Hunter Biden was tried and convicted. That's what a pardon's for. His 5 brothers and sisters and Fauci, preemptively, that shouldn't happen. Now, on the Trump side, I don't have a problem with it at all because these individuals were all convicted. Many of them had already begun to serve sentences. They were prosecuted politically in a way that did not occur for all of the BLM protesters that were burning down police stations, that were engaging in violent acts.
Well, many people involved in those did actually get convicted of crimes.
That led to violence differently. And so Trump is now saying, well, they've served their time. I think they have been punished beyond what they would have been punished if this hadn't been a Capitol riot, if it had been a riot that was going on in Washington, D.C. for months, as we saw with BLM. And in one fell swoop, rather than get into the intricacy and the nuance and say, hey, this guy's going to be treated differently, he just said, I'm putting this behind us. This is no longer going to be the argument that this is a worse day than Pearl Harbor, January 6th, or that this was the most dastardly and awful day for the Republic since the Civil War. We're putting this all behind us. One more thing. I wish Biden had pardoned Trump. If I were advising him, I would have said to do it, because if he cares about his legacy, Biden could have done this and just wiped the slate clean once and for all and said, you know what, this whole lawfare era is awful. We shouldn't do it. That's what I would have encouraged.
I think that's a good...
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the violent offenders on J6, listen, I don't know the details of everyone that's been convicted or whatever, but as far as I know, no one got unalived that day other than Ashley Babbitt, which, by the way, the cop who did that to her, I don't believe that he served any time. I don't believe he got any punishment, and he actually unalived her. No punishment on their part. The left is all about anti-police brutality. Well, except unless it's done the right-wingers, then it's all great, you know, right? In terms of the violent offenders, I don't know what they were in for. And were their punishments appropriate to the crime? Like, were they in there because they were, well, I mean, yeah, if you assault a police officer and stuff, yes, you broke the law. But was their punishment fair? Was their punishment fair, or were they being treated unfairly and given harsher sentences because they want to make a big thing out of J6? So those are questions that I would ask before I come to any conclusions about, well, what about the violent offenders? And I'm not going to listen to the left lecture me or anyone else about the whole pardons and stuff, because, yeah, Biden's pardons were way worse. They were just blanket immunities, 10-year retroactive purges, pretty much, where they can't be convicted for the last 10 years of anything illegal they might have done. I don't hear the left complaining about that. They don't really care about that. And even if they do care, they still think the Trump pardons are somehow worse. So obviously, we really shouldn't pay attention much at all to what they say, because they're not looking at it objectively. They're looking at it through, well, we do it, it's good, or, you know, it's bad, but not as bad. But when the right-wingers do it, oh, it's the worst. What do you guys think about that? Sound off in the comments section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy so far. Let's see if there's any last moments here.
Treat like situations in a like
I
manner.
think that's a good point. Ali, briefly, your view of the pardon situation.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the GOP has positioned itself for a long time as the pro-police, anti-crime party. And then they have made a million excuses for what happened on January 6th and whitewashed and gaslighted all of America, essentially, about that day. And anyone who was watching that day knows how violent it was and how scary it was to watch people break into the Capitol building. So, you know, now that they're okay with these people back on the
Yeah, okay. So, like I said earlier, we shouldn't really listen to these people's opinions much. It was more, as an American, even looking at this unbiased, from an unbiased perspective, it was much scarier to watch the Summer of Love, where buildings were burning down and such, and massive destruction. People did die during the Summer of Love. That was less scary. That was much more scarier to watch than anything that happened on January 6th. They said we gaslit the people. No, they gaslit the people. And they're saying we are making excuses. But it's not that we're making excuses. Is that you're trying to compare it literally to 9/11. Like, you're saying it's the most horrific day that has ever happened. And we're just saying, like, listen, January 6th, not good. No bueno. But it was not the new 9/11. That's just too much. That's as far as I know, that has been our argument this whole time. January 6th was not good, but it was not as bad as you're making it out to be. And the Democrats and the left have done way more damage and done way worse the last 8 years. So yeah, we should not listen to these people when they try to lecture us about this, and that, because they have no principles. The only principle they have is it's good when we do it, it's bad when they do it. What did you guys think about this Piers Morgan clip? How did you guys think the Clay, what's his face did, and Dave Smith, and what about Tim Miller? How do you think he did? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this, and if you do enjoy content like this, if you like seeing if you like laughing at Tim Miller, if you like seeing Piers Morgan host his panels, I got more goodies for you on the screen to click away and enjoy.